So there's this meme on the internet that has a CFO and the CEO standing next to each other. And the CFO, they're talking about training, right? And the CFO is like, man, what are we going to do if we train up all of our employees and then they decide to leave and go somewhere else? And the CEO looks at him and says, well, what if we don't train them and they stay? Right. So all that to say is you have a choice in your business to train your technicians, invest in them, or not. And I know from my side at Diesel Laptops, I invest a lot of money in training our employees. We send them to conferences, we do online training, we bring trainers in. We're constantly doing training across a wide spectrum of things. So anyone running a business, training is critical. It not only improves the performance of your employees, but it helps the retention. Employees that are getting trained are typically happier and stay working for you. So there's a lot of good reasons to do it. But in our industry, there is a severe lack of training that happens. And I believe it's not because people don't want to get trained. It's because there's not a lot of opportunity for them to actually get trained. So this whole episode is about Diesel Training, which is a division of our company that focuses on training technicians. So I'm going to have Scott Meeks on the podcast with me here. And we're going to talk about all things training for diesel technicians, how we got here, where we're at today, and where we're going. So give it a listen. I know you're going to love it. Well, if there's one thing I have learned doing this whole thing at Diesel Laptops here is just giving someone the world's most powerful diagnostic tools doesn't actually allow them to fix anything any more than they could the day before. And one of the big missing pieces of that is the fact that people need training. Not on the software. They need that. Let me take that back. They need that. But what they really need are the skills to properly diagnose and troubleshoot that problem that's in front of them, and the tools are really, diagnostic laptops are a tool to enable them to do that. So I thought today I'd bring in Scott Meeks, who is our training manager here at Diesel Laptops, to kind of go over all this. And Scott, I think maybe just start a little bit of a background, and I think maybe we've done this before, but like you're not an instructor that's been teaching at a Votech college here for the last 10 years that we brought in.
Right.
Why don't we give everyone your background just a little bit? So
yeah, man. So quick background on me. I started as a technician in 2003 at a local international dealership and worked from there till mid-2018. In that time, I started out at the very bottom, cleaning mop buckets, cleaning tools, whatever. Around 05, they started throwing me some engine work and transmissions and rear ends and stuff like that. And kind of climbed that ladder. And then somewhere around 08, 09, when emissions really started hitting, they decided they need some diagnostic techs. So they took me and two other gentlemen, and they trained us to the top tier they could and set us free. So from 09 until I came here in 2018, pretty much every day was diagnostics, man, day in and day out. So came here in 18 and then got the luxury of starting the training program with Dustin Carnes, and we built that. Still building it, but I was a trainer and a curriculum builder, I guess would be the word, till May of 22, and then got promoted to training manager, and here we are,
Yeah, well, I guess you're gonna have like your 5-year badge coming up here pretty soon, then, right? Like,
so I believe that was this July. I just passed it. Yeah.
Hey, happy 5-year anniversary! Man. I should know these things, but I don't.
It's all
we
good,
do the
man.
award ceremony every year, right? So, no, very good to have you here and talking through all this, because I was actually surprised, kind of, right? So I was a service manager. I was working with technicians every day, working in the shop. And I kind of went to work we worked at the same dealership before this. And like 04, 06, 07, things were just starting to come, new EGR systems. Things were starting to become a little more complex all of a sudden. And then it just like took off like a curve, right? It was really tough. And the thing I think that shocks most people is they assume when you go to a dealership, everyone there is completely trained up and understands everything and how to properly diagnose a truck. But me and you both inside dealership shops before, we've been inside independent shops.
Sure.
There's not a lot of training opportunity. I mean, there's online stuff. Not everyone gets to go to classes.
Right.
And I think it really makes it super difficult for the independent guys.
Sure.
Like,
Absolutely.
Where do they go get training?
That's a great question. Some of the OEMs allow it, but you got to remember, like with an OEM training, if you want to go to a Cummins certification or Detroit or something like that, they've got their dealer network they got to deal with, right? So they've got limited training opportunities. They definitely push training, but they're going to take their dealer techs first. So that really puts a hinder on the independent shops, doesn't really give them a fair shake. So yeah, that's where we come in, right?
Yeah. I mean, I think independent shops have it really tough because they're trying to do all makes, all models for everybody, for all their customers. and they don't have access to tools. They don't have access to repair information. They don't have access to training, and they're just there trying to figure it out and trying to get that customer going and down the road. So let's talk about the training we do here at Diesel Laptops, because I think we're more known for our diagnostic tools, not our training, although I think that's definitely changing.
Let's change that up,
yeah. It's changing as time goes on. But let's just go through, I guess, a couple of the different ways we actually help technicians be more efficient at their job, which is training. So let's talk about the first one, which is the in-classroom stuff, because that's where it really started at Diesel Laptops, was the in-classroom stuff. So can you walk us through kind of the courses that we have and how are they structured? How long are they? And like, let's talk about the in-classroom stuff for a little bit here.
No, that's all great questions. So with in-person training, we know that time matters, right? We know that having a tech away from your shop for a long amount of time is a big deal. So what we've tried to do is bust out 8-hour classes. So each class is one day. Now that doesn't mean, that's the only day in that subject. So for an example, if you go to a lot of training companies, they'll have like an electrical class, but it'll be 3 or 4 days. We do the same thing. We just bust it up into sections. So we have electrical 1, electrical 2, electrical testing techniques, data bus, oscilloscope, And so what we do is we kind of try to build an environment where if you've got a guy that already has electrical 1 and they need the further electrical diagnostic classes, then you can just come to those. You don't have to come to electrical 1. We want you to, but you don't have to. But everything's 8 hours, with the exception of certain software classes, which are roughly half a day. But most of the time you're coming in, you're going to have a 4-hour in-classroom, theory and operation, and then the afternoon's going to be mostly hands-on. Some classes are a little more hands-on than others. We've launched electrical testing techniques, which is going to be almost an entirely hands-on class. So, it really just depends what class you're coming to and what requirements are needed for hands-on. Electrical is always going to be a hands-on heavy class. Other ones, maybe not as much, but anything electrical is going to be very hands-on.
Well, and sure. I think the classes that we have now, too, we don't have them where it's just everyone's sitting around listening to a lecture for 8 hours, right? So we actually build our own lab boards.
We do.
Can you talk about the lab boards a little bit? And there's someone here that actually physically builds these things manually.
There is. He's hurt right now, so he's out on leave for a short amount of time. But we do our own labs in-house. Basically, we just sit down and say, okay, what are concepts and theories we want to teach in a practical application, and we just try to build a board around that, right? So we just come up with an idea of what we're trying to teach, and then the board is just a supplement to that,
Yeah, they're impressive. Like I think first of all they look great. I love when you guys put the little switches in there. There's different bugs in the system.
Sure,
And there's the big boards, and we'll talk about the mobile stuff. I know we have smaller boards that we do as well for those types of things. What are some of the most popular classes? I know we talked a lot about electrical. I guess after treatment's got to be one of the big ones.
After treatment is still to this day. I mean, here we are, 2023. I mean, you're talking 15, 16 years outside after treatment. It is still the hottest selling class by far. Electrical, when me and Dustin started that back in 18, we had a feeling that it would take off quick. It really didn't. But I think all this talk of EVs really starting to shake some people up. Electrical classes have really skyrocketed in the last, I'd say, 1.5 years, 2 years. We've really seen an uptake in those classes.
So anytime we talk electrical, I think where my mind goes to is kind of like the next evolution. And you mentioned it earlier, which is scopes, the oscilloscopes.
Sure.
So I know we have our own line of oscilloscopes that we do in partnership with Pico. How has that been with that? Because a scope isn't something you can just hand someone and expect them to do anything. It's a pretty steep learning curve, isn't it, to figure out how to use those things?
The scope itself isn't terrible to learn how to use. The problem that a lot of technicians run into is they want a scope. The scope's powerful. It's an invaluable tool, but they don't necessarily have the electrical foundation to utilize it yet. So if you take a guy who's okay at electrical and hand him a scope, he's going to have a much steeper learning curve than somebody who's already well-versed in electrical. But scopes, man, that's something that it's coming. If you're a shop and you're not using a scope, you need to get on it, because in 2025, that's going to be a mandated tool for a lot of your major OEs. So it's 2023. Now's the time to get started, get learning it, get using it. And that way, when 2025 hits and it's mandatory, you guys are ready. Just a powerful tool, man. Very powerful tool. And just a fun fact of that, Michael Albrock, our trainer in Chicago, he's considered in the 1% of scope users in the country. And when I say 1%, I mean the best 1%. He is insane with an oscilloscope. And so there's literally nothing we can't teach you through that guy,
Yeah, I'll give a quick plug for Michael.
Sure.
So I wish I was as passionate about something as Michael is with scopes. Like, he lives, breathes, eats scopes. And it is actually amazing what he can do with those. So if you go to our YouTube channel, I know there's a couple of videos on there with him doing all kinds of just crazy stuff. And I'm not talking just electrical stuff. I guess it is kind of electrical, but him troubleshooting injectors, him troubleshooting symptoms, vibrations. Like,
failed
it's
EGR coolers using a scope. Like,
Yeah,
it's wild stuff,
I don't
man.
even know how you do a failed EGR cooler with a
It's
scope.
not as hard as you think, but it's one of those things where he's just one of those guys that figured out. Funny story. A couple years ago, I had a meeting with him, and he was working from home that day, and behind him was a rack. And I said, Mike, where are you sitting? He said, well, I'm sitting in my man cave, my man room. And I said, cool, man. What you got on the rack behind you? And, oh, let me show you. So he turns around, and it's one of those metal racks. There's like 4 or 5 racks, and it's probably as long as that back wall, full of scopes, modules, Arduinos. And I'm like, Mike, what do you got back there? So, this is what I do for fun. I'm like, oh, okay, cool. So he truly lives and breathes oscilloscope diagnostics, man. That's his.
Sounds like my fishing guide I use. Like, I use him all the time for fishing. The guy's out there like twice a day fishing. I'm like, what do you do on your days off? He's like, I go fishing.
I go fishing. Yeah, exactly right.
Do what you love, right?
Exactly.
So I totally get it. But yeah, the classes are great. I know we were talking off the air before this. You said our Irmo facility, or actually our Columbia facility now, our new one that we just built, completely booked up through the end of the year. I know we're working on adding more courses. We do have a facility in Dallas that we have. We have a facility in Chicago. I know we have some partner facilities. There are classes out there, but training.diesellaptops.com is where you go to find that. And I think the interesting thing here too is I mentioned Dallas. There's a heavy Spanish-speaking population in Dallas.
There is.
So talk about the secondary language stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. So we hired a trainer named Juan. Fantastic guy, very smart, 15 to 20 years experience. He's bilingual. So all of our classes can be transferred into Spanish. I mean, if you have a Spanish-speaking, group of guys that need some training, like, you don't have to worry about that anymore. We can help you. So just keep us in your back pocket. Again, Juan is he's based out of Dallas or Arlington, but he is ready to field train, so he can come to you. We have tons of options for that, man.
So when we did this, I was at first thinking it was just going to be software. So we launched our Texa course. I know we do Kajali. Those are very popular. And we quickly learned, man, people really need these other skills. And I guarantee if you walk out in your shop, or you probably already know the guys in your shop that are maybe a little bit behind on some of the training, not quite up to speed on how to properly diagnose things. Great classes there. Instructors like Scott are across the country helping students every single day. I think there's a training class going on somewhere in the United States pretty much every single day of the month now with diesel laptops, one way or the other. But what we found out is a lot of time people are like, hey, I can't send my technician to you because I'm 3 weeks back and I'm a small shop. I got 4 guys, 5 guys. I can't lose one of my guys. It just puts me in a bind. And we're like, they're right. We got to have some solutions to address this problem. Nothing is ever as good as being in the classroom for 8 hours and just being focused on something and interacting with peers and instructors and learning. But we made some, I think, pretty solid, good alternatives. And the one that we just launched, Diesel Laptop University, call it V2. So we had one originally, but we launched the second one. So Scott, talk about a little bit about our online learning platform.
It's tough. It's one of those things that when it comes to training, it's tough finding a solution that works for everybody, right? So in our minds, in-person training is the best. It is, hands down, every single time. But everybody is not available to do that, right? So what are the other opportunities that we have? Well, we have webinars, right? Online webinars, which are great, but the downside to online webinars, they're live. So you have to be there, at a specific time, specific date. Sometimes that doesn't work either, right? So in comes Diesel Laptops University. And the goal of this training was, in my opinion, a little more difficult. And I'm going to say something you may or may not like, right? For me, online training has always kind of been for managers, right? It's a quick and easy button. Hey, go home, take this class tonight, take this at lunch. It's a way to really quickly get some guys some training. And traditionally, technicians aren't, super pumped about online training. So with that being the case, it's our mission to try to make technicians pumped about online training, right? So how do we create an online platform that makes managers happy, makes technicians happy, everybody truly learns something? So Diesel Laptops University, what we did is we have basically create courses, and those courses are going to be a lot of verbiage. You're going to do some reading, but there's also on a lot of these courses, there's a lot of video content that's really going to help you, see what we're talking about, visualize it, make it a little more exciting, a little more fun, really get people excited about it, and make them want to keep going, So
yeah, so I'm going to talk about the platform here for just a little bit, all right? Because to me, this is a big deal. So when we first did this, I was like, if we're going to do online, we're going to do it right. And to me, that meant a couple things. Number one, we needed to find a platform. And you would think if you Google online learning training platforms, not any content, just the platform, the interface, like loading the courses, the admin thing, right? The user interface, you would think there'd be like a billion of them to pick from and they'd all be great.
Yeah, it's not that simple.
Well, there are a billion of them, I'll
Sure.
say that much. But the problem I ran into was that every single one of them was like, well, you have to pay us like $3 per month per user.
Yep.
And I'm like, well, I'm going to have a ton of free content on here. I'm going to have tens of thousands of users.
Right.
And I'm not going to be stroking you $50,000, $100,000 checks every month for the privilege to use your platform. So what that meant is we had to go build our own platform, which is what we did. So we have our own platform that we now own and control, which is great because we can make it do anything we want. So that's been great for us. And the other thing is now we need content. So I know I had Dustin, you were probably involved too. We were actually looking at other people's content that already existed.
Sure.
Like, cool. Surely somebody already has content on electrical troubleshooting for commercial trucks or after treatment or engine overhauls or whatever. And they did. But the problem was they're like, well, it's like $250,000 for you to buy the rights to this program. Actually, a lot wouldn't even sell us the rights.
Right.
Or it was a stupid high price. And I'm like, look, I just want the content and I want to put it in my platform. And they're like, no. A lot of them again was like, well, per user, per month, usage, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, I can't do this because a lot of what we're going to do here at the end of the day is going to be free to people. And I'm like, I want to modify the content. Well, you can't modify it. I'm like, okay, this isn't going to work for us.
Right.
So I was like, how about you just sell me the entire thing? Sell me that class. Almost everybody refused to do it. And I'm like, why would you not just sell me that one-time deal? They're like, well, we want the recurring revenue. And like, you have no idea how difficult this is. You have to hire subject matter experts. You got to hire voice people and you got to do video and blah, blah, blah. Do you have any idea how much it's going to cost to build your own online learning modules? I'm like, you know what? I don't know, but I'm going to find out.
We're going to see.
We're going to find out, right? So that's what we did. We hired 2 full-time course authors, and these are highly educated people. They're not subject matter experts,
right?
But they're very, very smart people coming out of universities that know how to look at pretty much anything and put it into an online learning platform. So this online learning platform, the classes are not just like click a video and watch. It's a lot of interactive stuff. You have little quizzes. You have to match things. You have to click on things. You have to do things. There are videos in there.
Right.
We have a room at our headquarters, training headquarters in Columbia here, where we actually do all the recordings and that type of thing. But we have the subject matter experts like Scott.
Right.
Who actually go back and review the content. So how has that process been going working with the course authors that we have?
It's going good, man. Basically what ends up happening is we create a timeline of what classes we want to launch and when, and then we queue those up. And then our course authors, who are fantastic, by the way, love them both, they start putting all that together. And then we do like a preliminary review where we say, okay, maybe you missed this. Maybe we should rearrange this, maybe clarify that. They go in, they fix it. And then we queue up video sessions. So we say, okay, we need to shoot a video for this piece, this piece, this piece, this piece. Marketing team comes out, shoots the videos, records them, edits them. We send them over to the course authors. They queue it all up, finalize it, send it to us. We do a final review, and then we say, yeah, we're ready to go live. I mean, it takes some planning, and it's an undertaking. They were right. It's a lot. It's a lot to do, but it's not that we can't handle it. We just got to be smart about how we do it and make it happen.
But you know what? Screw them. We figured it out.
We figured it out.
We built our own platform. We built all of our own content.
Yep.
And we had to build a process. And I think that process is actually one of the more complicated pieces of that whole thing.
For sure.
So as the business scales, that's been one of my learning lessons here is like, man, injecting new processes and things that have never been done before aren't always easy. But once you do it, and that path, that road gets built, you can start traveling down it pretty fast.
Exactly.
So I know it took us a while to get like the first course. Yep. But now it seems like we're doing a couple courses a month. They're kind of getting knocked out through the process.
So our goal right now is 2 a month. And with the current crew that I have, that's we're pushing for that. We're working for that. But on the flip side of that, the course authors, man, they'll be working 5 or 6 classes at a time. If they get a hang up in one spot, they move to the next one, and we just try to keep manipulating until we can get everything where we need it to be and send them bad boys out into the atmosphere.
Yeah, no, I'm excited. So there's not a ton of online content now. I think our core courses, electrical and after treatment and that type of stuff is done. We're building out more courses that get launched every single month.
Yep.
And we have third parties that are going to be working with us as well. So I can name some of them, like Donaldson Filtration. We're not the experts on filtration.
That's right.
Donaldson is.
Yep.
So Donaldson, let's use your content on our platform. And let's make your content free for everybody once it's on our platform. So you're going to see a lot of third parties. We got OEMs, we got parts manufacturers, we got some other people in the space that are involved, subject matter experts. I'm really excited because I know people kind of laughed at me when I said, hey, I'm going to build the world's largest online learning platform for diesel technicians. And I already know we're like well on our way to doing that. And what comes right behind that for me, and things we haven't even talked about yet, is like, okay, how do we get training now for service writers, for foremen, for service managers?
Absolutely.
For the other people that are involved in the repair process, because that's what this is training is critical to improving the output of any shop across the country.
People probably laughed at you when you said you were starting diesel laptops too, and look how that went, right?
So I was just with my dad like last week. I brought him with me on a business trip, right? I was just with him, and I'm like, he was talking about that, and I'm like, Dad, do you remember when you told me like, well, how many people really need a diagnostic tool? Like, what are you gonna do once everybody has one? Blah blah blah. And I'm like, I don't know. Figure it out, I guess, right? So we're figuring it out.
Swing, man.
Yeah, company's still doing well. But no, I always love that when people tell me I can't do something. To me, that's like ammo in the gun, right?
It sure is.
All right, now I'm gonna go do it and prove you wrong. So I love challenges like that. So that's our online learning platform.
Yep.
And we have another way that we also go reach customers as well.
Absolutely.
And that's field training.
Yes.
So talk about field training.
Field training is great, man. Field training, basically, you call us up or email us. We have a lot of different ways you can contact us directly on the website, phone, email, but basically you reach out to us and let us know that you need some field training. We'll work up an estimate for you, and we'll send it over to you. And once approved, we basically load up and we come to you. So, literally every single week of the year, literally every single week, we have 1, 2, or 3 trainers that are in the field at somebody's shop, teaching them one of our classes at their site, it's a big deal, right? Because when you go to somebody's home base, they're more comfortable, they're more relaxed. The managers are there to watch and make sure their techs are staying on track. It's a great program. We also, we try not to, but we do offer Saturdays as well. So if you needed a Saturday training, we do have a small little upcharge fee for that. But we can even do Saturdays, which is becoming a kind of a common theme. Shops really want to, capitalize on making money during the week, and on Saturday they'll do some training. So we have Saturday options as well available. So man, we just pack the labs up and ship them out to you a week in advance. Trainer shows up and away we go.
Yeah. So I think we're trying to do everything we can to put the opportunity in front of repair shops and fleets to say, hey, here's some training that's available to you. And I think it's really one of the missing pieces. What this all comes back to, what we're trying to do here, is trying to help with this huge diesel technician shortage going on. I think there's still something like 50,000 open jobs on Indeed just for diesel techs.
It's wild, man.
Yeah, and the first listing when I looked a couple of months ago was, I think, like TA, and there was like one listing, but 127 jobs open. So there is a huge need for diesel technicians, and we're not going to fill them all with, this problem's not going to get solved with just us bringing in more diesel techs. It's going to get solved by making them more efficient in the shop. And that's coming from having the tools and the training that you need in order to properly diagnose and fix those things. So, Scott, is there any more do we have more classes in development right now at all?
We do.
Where are you guys at?
Yeah. So we'll be launching an ABS class here pretty shortly. We just launched electrical testing techniques, which is a full hands-on class. And then early next year, mid next year, we're hoping to launch a mechanical oscilloscope class, which would take oscilloscope diagnostics to mechanical problems, so we can help technicians, get further with the scope. I foresee a lot of scope stuff coming in the future, just because we're heading that direction. And I think the more exposure we can get to technicians with oscilloscopes, the better everybody's going to be. So definitely see that direction heading pretty strong in 24.
So I remember being a service manager at the international dealership, and they came out with the CPA, I think, a cylinder performance analyzer.
That's it.
Right? And in hindsight, that was a scope.
That was a scope. It was a very cheesy version of one, but yeah, it was a scope, man. And they didn't do anybody good service with that tool, in my opinion, because what they did is they created a tool that a technician wasn't able to really see what was happening. You basically do the recording sample, you send it into tech support, and they would analyze it and tell you the direction. I think they did a pretty big disservice by not coming out with a class and teaching technicians what that tool was and how it was doing what it was doing. And I get that they didn't want to, run the risk of technicians analyzing their own waveforms. I get that, but man, that tool's been out for a long time. There was a real chance to get some real training in early with that tool.
Yeah, I mean, our industry is just behind the automotive industry like 10 years.
We're
at least
behind.
when it comes to like technology and training and all those things. And I even know like Texa, we're like, huge Texa distributor, right? Biggest in the world. And they have a scope. It's only in Europe. They never brought it over here. And I didn't understand it at the time, but I remember being in a training class 6 years ago. And they're like, well, we can't bring it here because it's one of those things we have to have training and curriculum set up and a waveform library. Like there's more to it.
It's complex.
It's complex, but man, you can fix some stuff quick with that tool.
It can really make a difference. Absolutely.
Yeah. All right, Scott. Well, thank you for coming on.
Yeah, man.
Thank you for spending a little time here this morning talking about all things training. If you've never checked out one of our training facilities, you can actually go on training.diesellaptops.com. You can look at the online stuff. You can look at our classes. There is something going on all over the United States, any given day of the week, or things you can do at your house, at your shop, in your car, on your phone. You can do these training classes. So,
but not while driving.
Not while driving. Not while driving. Not while driving. Actually, okay. Little sidebar note. I bought this little thing called a Magic Box.
Okay.
Have you ever seen this? This ad came across, right, like on Instagram or something.
Sure.
So you plug it into your vehicle through the USB port.
Okay.
And literally, you can get Netflix, Hulu, Amazon Prime, all this stuff.
Great.
Super dangerous.
Super dangerous.
But my kids love watching Walking Dead while we're going 80 miles an hour down the freeway. So
it's great for everybody but the driver.
It is. Don't not supposed to drive with it apparently. But anyhow, thank you for watching. Thank you for listening. Like, comment, share, subscribe. It's all appreciated, and we will catch you on the next episode of the DL.